Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Introductions. I will have everyone introduce themselves. I'm Mary Ewald.
I'm Grace Sales.
Ashley Meyer.
Mary Ann Lawrence.
Having done that, is going down the agenda. Are there any public comments on a non-agenda item? Hearing none, we'll move to old business. Terry, is there anything that you know of that we need to look at?
Not that I've been made aware of.
Okay, moving down the agenda to new business. Case HDC 25-18, which is 1811 Fifth Street. And they are looking for a certificate
Point of order?
appropriateness.
That's that you skipped over there.
Sorry about that. Approval of the minutes for the June 25th meeting. Is there a motion to approve as submitted, or are there corrections?
I move to approve the minutes of June 25th, 2025, approved as submitted.
Is there support?
Second.
It's been moved and supported to accept the minutes as submitted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Now, scooting on down to new business, HDC case 2518. They're looking for a certificate of appropriateness for their porch and exterior work at the residence. Is the homeowner or their representative here? Hi, welcome, thanks for coming. If you can introduce yourself, kind of walk us through your project, and, oh boy, I'm sorry about that, son.
Yeah, well, I'll work it out.
Does this, I hate to have him blinded by the end of the night. There you go.
Oh, I can see you. Okay,
There we go.
better. My name's
Okay.
Daniel Townsend. I'm here with my wife, Lainey. We own the house at 1811. Well, it started with a sewer problem that we had to tear out the front steps for. And originally, we were just going to replace the front steps, and then we thought, no, let's make this the real deal. So it's turned into pretty much a porch replacement because we'd like to replace what's there, which is clearly not historical, with something much more historical. So, we'll be working on this project with our neighbor and friend across the street, Mark Walker. He's right here. And he's very versed in construction and that sort of thing. So the big plan is to, first of all, take out all the inappropriate materials like the deck boarding and basically the posts that are holding the deck and the roof up are kind of like warped deck building lumber. So we're getting rid of all that, and we'd like to replace it with, we don't really know what the original porch looked like in 1910. What appears to be there is more of a 1970s build with 2x4s and the railing and the gaps between the railing is not up to code. It's just kind of a mess. So we want to make it pretty. We want to do tongue and groove deck boards. And we want to do, like in the other houses in the neighborhood, everybody has stone-built or block-built wing walls. So we'd like to actually have poured cement steps between wing walls that step up, and we'd like to put block around the corner pillars and at the head of the wing walls, so that it kind of matches everything else that's going on in the neighborhood.
Similar to the one that shows your next door neighbor at 1809?
That's correct. In fact, our porch deck is oddly shaped. It's kind of skinny on each side and comes out towards the steps, you know, a couple feet. And our neighbor, as you can see, has like a rectangular porch with the stone pillars and the tapered columns above it. And we're pretty much just trying to copy that style with, you know, the very similar materials as best as we can match that sort of thing.
So
page 25,
which home are you trying to replicate? Like 1818 or
1809.
Right.
1809?
The other houses on the list are just showing that almost everybody has the stone wing walls, and several have the tapered columns. Other people have different types of columns above their stone pillars, but ours would be similar to the house immediately next door to us, as well as a couple of the other ones. 1818 has a kind of a similar layout, but our columns will be a little more slender, more like 1809. So
I think that's probably more appropriate for your house anyway, that one.
that's what
More of a
we-
craftsman style,
Right.
kind of arts and crafts. It's not,
Right.
it's not yours.
Right.
I saw there was a picture of what looked like a turn spindle in this packet.
Oh, yeah.
Now, is that only for the railing, or is that on, yes, but is that only for, or is it up on the porch as well, going to be used?
As far as the railing for the stairs go, we've already talked to the code department, and they said that if we make the wing walls a certain height with regard to the step, and they kind of detailed it out, then he would allow it, because it's a historical thing, to use the wing walls themselves as the railing. It can qualify. And so the spindles and the balustrades would just be the railing on the ends of the porch and coming on each side on the front between the pillars. If we must, for some reason, let's say that our wing walls can't achieve that railing code because they're not exactly, but we plan to make it so. But we are willing to put wood railings down there, which would be the same spindles. In other words, all that would match.
So at this time, just so that I am understanding this correctly, at 1809, they do show that they have wood railings next to the brick wing walls.
That is correct.
At this time, you are not planning to put wood railings up unless your wing walls are not to meet code.
Right, and according to our conversation, we can custom make those wing walls to meet code as far as being a railing. If you look at some of the houses across the street, they're kind of grandfathered in. They don't have the railing because they haven't been code checked on it. But that's the more historical look, to just have the wing walls, and that's what we're shooting for. So, yeah.
The other thing historically that they used to do is they would put the iron roll poles that you'll see on one of these pictures had one. Oh yeah, 820 Johnson. But they would sink them into the wing walls. I know that sounds weird, but that's how they would do it. They'd kind of bend them in a little bit so they were a little bit more this way. But that's more historically speaking what they would do. The wrought iron is actually more historically accurate for that setup than a spindle.
The wood railing?
Yeah, they don't do that really. Sometimes you'll see them historically where they'll split the steps right in the middle and they'll put
We
one.
don't like that look at all.
But it's just not, they just didn't do that with wing walls. You either had wing walls with wrought iron or you had wood spindles. That was it. There was no, it's weird. It looks weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you say that the existing railing, I was looking at your original pictures here, that's on your porch. You say those are made out of 2x4s?
Yeah, we're not even sure if they're treated lumber, but yeah, they're painted 2x4s. And they remind me of kind of a 70s room divider or something. So they're certainly not code, and they're not historic to the period, so we just kind of want to make that all go away.
Now, how wide are your deck boards? And perhaps I missed that.
How wide are what?
The deck boards? The wood deck boards?
There's a picture of them. Mark, can you speak to that? It's either. They're 1x4. Okay, there you go. I got a tape measure on the.
Can you come to the mic so you can be recorded for the minutes, please? You just repeat what you were telling me again, please?
Yeah, there's a picture with a tape measure laying on a tongue and groove. There, he's got it on the screen too.
So you're using 4x, so it's like actual 3 1/4 or 3 3/4? Okay.
3/4 by, yeah, 3 3/4. The old style was 3 3/4. It's going to end up about 3 1/2, but just basically like that, just maybe a tad smaller than that one. Because old 1900s, when you bought a 2x4, it was a true 2x4, and now it's 3 1/2.
4s aren't 4s anymore.
Right? Fours aren't fours no more.
Math isn't real anymore.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask you, and I read through the packet, but maybe it just didn't make sense to me. Are these, is this for lattice underneath, or what is?
Yeah, those are two options we thought of for lattice, just because we have to, dress the underneath of the porch. It would be basically framed out and have a lattice behind it. And I don't know what works historically or whatever. Those are two of the options we were considering.
I think there's versions of, they were all different, but there's versions of these, you'll see all over the place. So dealer's choice.
So
They would both be in the.
we thought, our house inside has some Victorian elements, like the escutcheons and the doorknobs are all carved and everything. And so that's some of the sentiment we want to bring outside with those elements.
That's what I would guess.
Decorative
It looks like they've kind of stripped the character out of it, but that's what I would have guessed that it was originally built as, especially with that pediment, which I was going to ask you, now that you're going flat, is that pediment still going to be there but just be flush, or are you getting rid of it? What I just said? Okay.
So if you look at that drawing, back up one, right there. See how it's flat across, but it still has the porch front will be straight across.
Right, because we're bringing the deck of the porch to be an even line all the way across it as in a rectangle. The roof above the porch will also be brought out to be an even straight line across the front, basically. It'll have all the same elements. It's just going to cover the new deck geometry.
So in essence, it's going to give the look of like a dormer? I mean, now that it's buried in the roof line like that? Okay. Well, but then on this page, on 13, it looks like it extends out.
It looks like it because that's only the software. It's going to be flush with that straight across.
Oh yeah, that's just the 3D.
You're looking at it on an angle.
Yeah, the 3D rendering of the software, that's sort of an illusion, like a glitch.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So then the front of it is going to be flush with the front of the new extension of the porch. It's not going to be buried in like 2 feet where it is now. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I have kind of a nitpicky question that doesn't really have any consequence. I just think it's a little funny.
Okay.
Your steps for your wing walls, it's probably based on the size of the block. I would imagine that you did 4 versus 3.
Yeah, and the reason being is basically I want the affordance on the steps to be comfortable. So they're going to be on the shallow side and the deeper side. So basically our wing wall is coming out a little farther, which allows us the extra steps. And plus the height of the wing walls to meet the railing requirement takes them out a little farther as well. So it's just basically to be comfortable and to be up to code. So.
Okay, hearing no other questions, is there a motion?
Oh, I do have more, sorry. So for the record, and, oh, sorry, Terry, but I kind of wish Tony was here because we've talked about this before. To my understanding, reading your proposal, is the intent for your, it looks like your deck surface and your, where was it else? I had it highlighted. There was another portion I thought that you plan on leaving it wood, just sealing it with a marine finish versus paint?
That's correct. We're going to oil stain, in fact, we're going to stain the natural wood pieces with an oil stain to begin with before any of it's installed, and seal it with a marine grade clear sealer that has at least a 10-year life on it, so that we're going to stay ahead of any water getting anywhere near the grain of these things. But basically, they will be some shade of a natural wood color towards, it won't be a dark brown, it could be a light brown or more of a natural wood. We haven't really picked the shade yet.
Okay, and that was the poplar decking, and I thought there was one other thing.
Yeah, the decking itself will be poplar. The spindles, I believe, are an oak or a red oak is what we have been able to find available. I'm going to have to order those, and they manufacture them. But the key to it all is that they'll be stained and sealed so that there's no, weathering issues with it.
And then it looks like your supports, your pillars, it says I-beams encased in stained wood and supported by 6x6.
Correct, yeah, the tapered pillars, and as well, the new roof line that goes all the way across the front will be supported by a steel I-beam, and that will be encased in natural wood, to stain to match all of that.
Okay.
So it'll have like a coherence to the wood design.
Okay. The reason I bring it up, Terry, and I could be making this up, but I don't think I am, is there, at least in the past, we've talked about and required that people paint. And I think the ordinance might be that it's sealed, but as far as the historic district, I thought that there might be a stipulation that things had to be painted specifically versus sealed.
Call some issues when people wanted to paint previously, like pressure-treated stuff. I remember those, but not so much in this set of facts.
Because I know that we've definitely required, made multiple motions with contingencies that they had to be painted. Now, the question is, was it that it had to be painted or just that it had to be sealed?
Well, I think the key factor was because of that green wood and the pressure treatment, and knowing that it did take time to weather, that the solution was to paint it after, that 1 year. And not leave it with that color of the typical decking.
Right, so people didn't just throw some varnish on it and call it a day.
Right.
Poly or whatever.
It is just, and then paint or stain, I believe, would be acceptable.
And personal opinion, I can't speak for anyone else here. I think, the deck boards, that's completely logical, as long as you're good about continuing to seal them, because I know that does wear down faster.
Right.
But, as long as you're keeping up with it. But as far as the pillars and columns, that's not really historically appropriate. I mean, they didn't really, because of the weathering, you'd see like beadboard on the roof. You'd see
Right.
that a lot left naturally. But, and, you know, and the decks maybe every now and again, but even then, you know, because it just doesn't hold up like paint does, especially back when they used to use oil-based paint and it was a lot more resilient. So, I mean, I don't know, it's something to ponder for whether it's, you know, again, this is just me, I can only speak for myself.
If you look at most of the pictures from the neighbors, I mean, all of those pillars are painted. I can't really tell so much about the porches themselves, but the pillars for sure are painted. See any exposed wood?
I do concede that. Well, I guess I know the coloration varies, and I guess we could parse out whether the coloration of a stain, in other words, the pillars would be different colors, and if it's a wood color versus a brown color versus a white color, I am willing to, let me put it this way. Our preference, we drove around like 6th Street and some other neighborhoods, and we saw some treatments that were stained, and we thought they looked very nice, natural, like that. And we do have possible future intentions of repainting the house, and we were going to pick stains that would go with either direction we go on painting the house itself. Now, I would propose asking your consideration for that color, but we are also, if it's a definite no, as far as the historical element, we're willing to paint them a color. Assuming you don't have a specific color in mind. But basically, we're asking for the consideration to stain them, and if that's not acceptable, we're willing to paint them.
Terry, can you speak to whether or not you're aware of any of the homes that we've approved? Have we approved stain like that on pillars?
Boy, I would have to look at the record. I would be struggling to try to remember something.
I guess that's where my question lies too, because I've been on this board for like 4 or 5 years now, and I'm not sure we've ever approved anything like that. I don't think it's much of a stretch on the deck, even though I can't remember ever approving that either.
I don't recall it coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't recall anybody wanting to stain the pillars instead of paint. I just don't recall it.
I'm certain that they need to be sealed. I'm just not sure if it's that specific.
Couple of properties years ago, and it might trigger Mary's mind, some Rice properties. There was a gentleman by the name of Rice, and he owned one that is across the street from the fire station on Center, but it would be on Lincoln. It was right off the corner, the first house off the corner. That one, they had constructed the porch and everything with the wood, and then he came before the HDC, and I don't believe he was required to adjust it, and I think he wanted to have those stained because there was, but I'd have to verify that was the topic, was a stain versus a paint.
I have a quick question. I'm seeing your point, especially with the pillars, because everybody, you're right, everybody does seem to have them painted. And I could even see that for the trim regarding the top, because in general, the trim of the house is kind of part of that element. Would that also mean we would have to paint the banisters and spindles, or could those be natural wood? Because I do think I do see natural wood decking, like stained decking seems to be common, but and therefore, like for the aesthetic, that it seems like the railing and spindles could go with that. So if you were requiring paint on the trim and the pillars, would you also require it on the railing and the spindles, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, they're all kind of the same, thought, you know what I mean? They're all part of the same systems, they're all part of, like decking, even though you really didn't see it bare wood, that's definitely more of a modern thing, but it's not super far left field. I think getting into banisters and things, it starts to give a very unfinished, and I'm not saying that, you would, but that's kind of the arena it starts to get into when, and yes, I think they all kind of are columns, they're all part of a balustrade system in some way or another.
Well, a lot of that Tyvek has different shades too, so the flooring doesn't always seem to
The
be an
step,
issue.
the steps will be wood, correct?
No, the steps will be.
Or they're going to be
toward-
concrete?
toward cement,
Okay.
Yeah.
My thought is that if, and Terry, this would certainly be a question for you, if they were to approve the project, could it be with the stipulation that the paint versus stain issue could be resolved between them and you once you determined what the precedent has been?
That's kind of what I was thinking too, Mary, is
So
kind
we
of
are-
leave it for administrative review. Once Tony could kind of dig into the issue. What I'm afraid is that I don't want to set a precedent that we, because we like to be consistent with everybody, I don't want to set a precedent kind of without enough information and say that, we're okay approving these types of things when we haven't really gone back and looked at, have we done this before? What do the Secretary of the Interior guidelines suggest? Because as I said, in my memory, we haven't approved something like this, at least since I've been here. So I'd just like to have a little bit more information.
Yeah, and I'm not sure in the end if the property owner would, appreciate the appearance of it either.
Ooh, I didn't hear
The
that.
property owner, I'm not sure if that weathered look would look good, like you're pointing out.
They paint.
They have plans to just not stain it. They're putting on a 25-year marine, what they put on boats for a finish over the top of the wood. So it will not have what you're talking about. It's not just a Thompson stain they're talking about. They're putting a marine grade finish over the top of the color they pick.
Right, but
like
it's still a
Goujon's.
clear finish, is it not?
Yeah, but it's not gonna weather the way you're thinking because this stuff they're putting on goes on boats.
So you're
I
talking,
say I grew up on boats. I know exactly what you're talking
talking like a
about.
Goujon
It's industrial, thick, very well preserved, but unfortunately, there's more than just a functional element to it. There's an aesthetic element to it when you're in the historic district. Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't look like raw wood. No. Yeah, and I definitely concede that. But yeah, it's just, that's not really done. So we kind of have to
Just
dig into it.
another question, since we're on the subject. Now, I know you said that you're going to have concrete steps. Is your plan to leave those as is or to paint the steps?
Oh, that'll be, it's just cement colored.
Okay.
And you said that those are going to be poured in place. You're not using a
Not a
prefab
No.
staircase.
They
Okay.
will be poured. And with the proper footings and everything to support all this. Yeah, that's a good example of the poured steps, yeah.
One more question. The brick that you're putting in there for the wing walls, is that going to be painted or will that be as is?
Now, that'll be the color of the block we picked. Basically, we circled that on one of those forms. I believe walnut is what we were shooting for.
Painting that, or were they leaving it
Yeah,
bare?
we're gonna, yeah.
Well, I'm only asking because some of these pictures, the brick is painted.
Yeah, we're definitely going for a natural stone color in those.
Are there any further questions for the applicant? Hearing no other questions, is there a motion? Or is there a motion to approve with the stipulation that the finishing of the spindles and columns be left to administrative review so that a consistent determination can be rendered?
I would, just a suggestion, that I would lump all of those finishes together. I mean, I could see potentially splitting them, but just for the sake of Tony digging in and seeing what recommendations already exist, what the precedent is, and what exactly the wording is on any previous things, we might want to just put that whole issue in one basket. You see what I'm saying?
I have two quick questions regarding that. When you say lump them together, is that excluding the deck itself? Like, in other words, we can still stain the deck?
That's what I'm saying, is that, as far as getting more information, that getting those approvals together,
Oh, okay.
and Tony could determine whether, he thought that it would be okay, depending on what he dug up, to
As
do
far
one and not the other.
As far as precedent.
But having little knowledge on, all of these things, I'd feel more comfortable seeing what he found out before doing any version of that. Because as I said, we don't really do that. Usually it's
Okay.
paint, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
So it's not to say you couldn't do, it's more just giving it to Tony and saying,
Sure.
let him look at it and see what he determines and finds out.
Absolutely.
And then, and having him go from there.
We're willing to work with Tony on all of that. And just to be clear, if this were to move forward with that stipulation, we could get started on the deck, tearing down and everything. That's just a matter of finishes
Absolutely.
as determined later.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, great, okay.
And we want you to get your work done while it's warm.
Yeah, we do too.
I move that the Historic District Commission approve a certificate of appropriateness for the work described and depicted by the work review application for case HDC 25-18. The applicant has demonstrated the work will comply with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation 1 through 6, 9 and 10, as well as Section 6411C of the city's Historic Preservation District regulations, with the stipulation that the finish on the deck, trim, columns, am I missing anything?
Balustrades?
And balustrades are administratively approved on whether they are to be painted and/or have a finish on them as proposed by the applicant.
Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries, so you can certainly start moving forward and just follow up with Terry or Tony, whoever is in the office.
Okay,
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for all your hard work.
appreciate it, thank you.
Moving down the agenda to Public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to other business. Omni Fiber LLC, are they present, or is this something we just have to review?
Yeah, this is something that I'll be able to review with you. I'll first take the time to read the memo that was intended to be in the packet, because it does have an August 5th date on it. So I don't want to not take the time to kind of put some of the context to the cases that we'll do, so I'll just read it real quick. It says, applications for the placement of utility cabinets were received by the Planning Department from Omni Fiber. The city's Code of Ordinance provides standards and regulations for the installation of utility cabinets that are typically in the street right-of-way. In Section 34-142 of Chapter 34, Cable Communications, the ordinance requires a permit and a site plan being reviewed by the Planning Commission of the proposed location. The Planning Commission is assigned the authority for site plan review procedures and the public hearing notices required to be sent to nearby property. In Section 34-142E, the following statement is provided. It states that the Planning Department shall distribute copies of the site plan to the city engineer and any other public utility, city departments, and/or Historic District Commission have an authority over improvements at the proposed utility cabinet location. Omni Fiber submitted 19 applications, 5 of them were in the Historic District. So we're providing you those 5 that are within the Historic District. Then it states that the specifications for the size of the cabinets and other standards are provided in Section 34-145 and contains the following. And under number 6, it states that in historically sensitive areas within the city limits, the Planning Commission may require landscaping and/or screening surrounding the utility cabinet. In such case, the Planning Commission must approve any proposed landscaping and/or screening. The owner of the utility cabinet shall maintain and replace any plant material installed pursuant to subsection as needed. Fences and hedges within residential zones shall be installed and maintained as provided in Article 9 of Chapter 26 of this code. Such sensitive historical areas shall include, but not limited to, boulevards, city parks, and historic districts established pursuant to Chapter 64 of the City Code. The Historic District Commission is being asked to receive and review the proposed location of 5 cabinets and are permitted to recommend to the Planning Commission any landscaping or screening necessary at these locations. The Planning Commission has reviewed and approved 6 utility cabinets with no landscaping requirement. Both the Planning Commission and the Historic District Commission approved utility cabinets installed in 2014, and none of the proposed cabinets located either within the city limit or the Historic District were recommended to have screening installed. And just a couple more sentences. The applications presented herein will be scheduled for the September Planning Commission meeting, and any comments or recommendations can be shared with them. Attached is the 5 different cases which you did receive, and then I close out the memo there. What I also included on your desk is just a sample of that 2014 meeting. So on the agenda at that time, it was called VRAG cabinets with AT&T. And unfortunately, they had jumped the gun, installed some cabinets. So the one case in particular that I showed as an example is on your desk, showing the 3 locations, and this is 2014. But then I did highlight at the bottom where it says the city's utility cabinet and historic district regulations provide no guidance as to the Historical District Commission findings or recommendations for utility cabinets in the street right-of-way in the Center Avenue Historic District. And then you can see the cabinet that was installed on Farragut Street near Farragut School. What I will conclude with is by saying that Chapter 34 utility cabinets was prepared through the city attorney's office. The year on that, well, it looks like 2007 was maybe the first amendment, or that's when it was adopted. So we've had this ordinance in place. There's been, like the 2014 examples where AT&T wasn't aware that there was an ordinance. I have heard from Omni Fiber, and they're installing some of these throughout the local area, so they're in the townships of Bangor, they're in Monitor Township. Of course, Bay City is the only one that has this type of ordinance. Having said that, it is a city code of ordinance, so everything that is kind of contained within that ordinance, we follow it as a written city ordinance, but did it have a lot of cross-reference to other reference material? No, it didn't. The only time that it's referenced anything historical is I highlighted it, and here it says that the planning department does distribute those copies, having authority over improvements at the proposed location. Then the other reference is down here about that historically sensitive area, and then the Planning Commission can do the landscaping requirement. Part of, I think, the dilemma that is at issue with this ordinance is that, yes, there could be some screening, but we also have a city engineer that has already reviewed, these cabinets as part of this process that it goes through internally. And, they're always against any type of landscaping in that outlawn area. There's the big tree discussion going on, and, that's probably the high bar that has been set. But there's always been a tendency of limiting vegetation in that outlawn area. So in a way, an ordinance conflicts with some other engineering practices, but at the same time, the ordinance does allow that landscaping could be installed. I pointed out the 2014 because we have not had approved any of them previously to install landscaping. That wasn't the recommendation. I did include the meeting minutes to that, and basically it was a little bit different because on this particular one, I won't read through the meeting minutes or in the discussion on that, but clearly they had placed these before they went through the right procedures. So what we can do is go through each one of them, for we're familiar with the location, and see if there's all or one that might be of particular issue, and then kind of have a discussion on it. And ultimately, that discussion would be shared with the Planning Commission once, just like I have routed these through the different city departments, and then they offer their comment. The Historic District Commission is being kind of tasked with this, but then when you look at the Secretary of the Interior standards, there's nothing that I have found for this. The other unique thing about this is that, in a way, from a zoning standpoint, it's defined as an essential service, so it's a service with utilities needed for the health, safety, general welfare of the community, such as underground surface, overhead electrical, gas, telephone, steam, water, sewer, and other utilities, and the equipment and appurtenances, tenants, something like that, necessary for such systems to furnish an adequate level of service in the area which it is located. The term doesn't include wireless communication, towers, and antennas, but this would be similar to an essential service. similar to how the Consumers Energy was able to install those gas monitoring stations, or I think that regulating station. Thank you. So there's a couple of things about this ordinance that myself, I would like to clean up, but now's not the time to clean it up. There's the recommendation that can be made by the Historic District Commission. So what I'd like to do is just go through each of those, and let's get a look at where they are.
Can I make a comment?
Yep.
So I think my recollection was clear that AT&T had started installing before that even came to
Right.
us.
Yep.
I understand the essential service thing. I understand that the Planning Commission has approved these. I did read in here, and if I'm correct, if we require any kind of landscaping, then the Omni Fiber would be responsible for the maintenance of that screening. I appreciate the handouts, and as I look back 11 years ago, Farragut, Bernie, they were not on the main thoroughfare, shall I say. The other was on North Trumbull, which is across center, so more on the way to going over the bridge and part of kind of a state highway. So I don't know that there really is, I guess, much on these others. However, my concern is the Center Avenue and the McKinley Street, since those are main thoroughfares and not only well-traveled, but containing a good amount of historic and maintained homes as you go further down McKinley. My thought would be looking at some kind of screening for those.
I had similar but slightly different thoughts. Same thing, even your preamble. I sit on the Planning Commission, so we had this whole conversation, so I was there for that. As far as I'll bring up the same point that I did at that meeting, which was these are very large cabinets. These are not tiny little cabinets. They stand almost as tall as I do. I'm sorry, what's that? How do they compare with the AT&T ones? I don't know what the size of the AT&T ones, but these are 48 inches high. I brought a
Yep, you got to try to pick up the mic there. Yep.
When it stands this tall, it's a very large visual obstruction. And what's unique to the HDC that does not apply to Planning Commission or as far as writing ordinances and, the utilities and all that, is that we are charged with an aesthetic element of making sure that these things look appropriate in this historic setting. And I'm with Mary in that, frankly, a lot of these side streets, a lot of these locations that already exist and have been approved before by the HDC are not main thoroughfares. They're kind of off the beaten path. I wouldn't even care that much, frankly, if they just took that cabinet on center and shifted it around the corner and just went like 10 to 15 feet down, what is that, Van Buren? If we're on Center Avenue, is it center? What are we on? Yeah, Van Buren, right?
Yeah, and let me state while you're looking that up, I should have printed it off, but I had distributed it to MDOT, and MDOT's comment was they preferred that it not be located in the right-of-way. Now, I just received that comment, so now the question is to get that feedback back to Omni Fiber or back to the Planning Commission as we go through that process. But MDOT themselves, they didn't say that they couldn't issue a permit, but they would prefer that that one that's located on Center be located off of Center.
Yeah.
I have another question. And as I looked through here, the Center Avenue site, as well as the Sixth Street site, in the view that I have from here, if I were to be sitting in my vehicle, not up in a van or a truck, but in a regular vehicle, going down the street and that thing is 48 inches tall, is that going to be a visual obstruction for people going down the street and then the side street turning? That I don't know.
Yeah, and that's where that checklist comes into play within the staff report, because there is these standards right here are taken right from the ordinance.
So,
So in their opinion, they met the requirement.
Yeah, they kind of it kind of sits, if you look in the picture, kind of in the middle, not in the middle from the street to the sidewalk, but in the middle of the, relatively, to here and there. And keep in mind also, this picture, they just slapped a picture of the cabinet on there to give you an idea.
Right.
But they're going to be oriented the other direction. So that's where those measurements of 18 wide, that's where that plays in, is that if it's turned sideways and you're driving down the street, you're only 18 inches obstructed from a visual and safety standpoint.
I think for me, the biggest one here, I mean, yeah, the one on McKinley, but specifically the one on Center. I mean, in addition to the fact that this is in the historic district, I mean, we have events that happen down Center Avenue in our town here that are popular. You have people that are seeing that this is not of historical value at all.
I think I agree with MDOT that one on Center really should be around the corner on Van Buren.
Yeah, I mean, even from a functional standpoint, which is more planning commission side, that seems rather obtrusive on such a highly trafficked street. I mean, this is not even McKinley, that's a 2-lane street.
so
This
close
is
to
a 5-lane street.
And so close
I
to
interject?
downtown,
Just
too.
Terry.
I said, and so close to downtown. I mean, you really, at that point where that's at on Center, you're getting very close to downtown, in my opinion.
Right, agreed.
Just to interject a little too, if we put it around the corner though, I mean, on Center Street, people are driving by. If you put it on on a side street, that's in front of somebody's house, and I would be furious.
Well, to be honest,
They're all in
utility
front of
cabinets are all over the city. They're always going to be in front of somebody's house. Although this is actually an apartment building.
Question. That's my next question is, why do they need more? Will they are they going to come back again? How frequently is this going to come up?
Yeah, they're basically putting them all over the city. So they're going to be
Yeah, but
many,
these-
So then let
Just
me
only-
ask you, Terry, I think what I asked you before is, why don't we put them underground? Why doesn't the city require these to be underground like new subdivisions do?
They,
Well,
they can't be.
Right.
Their access is because they need those fibers, they need to be able to access them above the ground. They can't put them in the ground. It's like, think of like a service panel, like think of like the electrical in your house. You still need a panel. It's similar to that, where they still need to be access to the lines. Does that make sense?
Kind of, I mean, what if it were flush with the, I don't know, I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
They're,
you
let's
don't
say,
see
circuit
them,
breakers.
Yeah,
but you don't
that's-
see them in new subdivisions, they're not allowed.
Right, but that's all new. That maybe is newer construction, and that's not really even within our purview. However, what I would mention is that on Center Avenue, if they were to put it on Van Buren Street around the corner, you've got a law office and a parking lot on the east side of the street, and on the west side of the street, you have a garage for a very large apartment building, and then beyond, maybe halfway down the block, is what used to be the reading room for the Christian Science church. So I don't think that where it would be located on Van Buren is not going to be in the front of anyone's home.
How many total will we have then? So 19 of these, and then how many more? I mean,
Remember, they told us at planning, but I don't remember the number. Do you, Terry?
is there a limit?
Initially, I was told there was a total of 50, and then we've received, what, 38? Or did we get, let's see,
Have they submitted all of them yet?
18.
Is that all of them?
No.
And
They also
30,
originally told
yeah,
us
I
that they were
think-
going to be a lot smaller. I mean,
In the 30 range, yep. Well, and I do apologize, because one of the things that I had shared with the Planning Commission, and I didn't put it on this thumb drive, is the information from OmniFiber that showed what they had on the use of underground vaults, because there is some of this work that has an underground vault to it with just a cap to it at grade level, and then it gets into the taller cabinets, like the 48-inch, and then they also had a smaller cabinet. So I should have had that as part of this viewing, because then, other than just the drawing that they had represented there, it was actually taken from the information about the cabinets itself.
so some of them would be flush, or that's an option?
I think some of the fiber connections and however they do the installation, because I know they do show those. Yeah, there's probably not a quick way.
say, I know that when we talked about it before, there was differences in the cabinets, so based on how they operated too. It wasn't just a matter, of, what size they liked, they preferred. I know that there was a functional element to which cabinets were used for what, whether they be passive cabinets or active, although I think they only had one
I'm
or
sure
two
there's
of
a
those
cost
active
factor.
cabinets.
If you want a 3-minute recess, I could go download the material about the cabinets. It would just take a matter of putting it on.
I think for me,
I had a question too, because on the handout that we just got today, the one that's in front of the Farragut School has a fairly significant concrete foundation under it. Now,
Yeah.
the other is not so much. So are we looking at these big concrete foundations that are going to be under these things?
that might have been because of grade too. I was looking at that. I would assume that they would do more like a pad, like you would have under like an AC unit or something.
To me,
Yep.
Yeah.
That foundation under that one by the school, that looks like something big it would be big enough for a monument in a cemetery.
to me, that plays into the aesthetic of it, and especially on center, to have that kind of thing.
And I understand the optional, there maybe can be some screening. I'm not so sure if that wouldn't even draw your attention to it more.
Which would also be a danger for drivers.
and
But the other thing that came up in planning when we talked about screening is that can really become, not only is that annoying for, city engineers and, maintenance for the city, but a lot of times what the gentleman had brought up was that a lot of times, it impedes the functionality. If you put a bunch of stuff around it, you can't open up the cabinets, and any landscaping that's around it is going to get trampled on. So what's the likelihood it's even going to stay looking nice, right?
Well, and it says that the company is responsible for taking care of it. And we've all worked with big corporations before, AT&T for an example. And do they really follow through with what they say?
And they're not
I've never
even
had
an
that
in-town
experience.
company. They're not even an in-town company. I think they're a smaller company. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think that they're local. I mean, I think a big reason why you didn't show up tonight or at the planning commission meeting is because it was such a drive.
They're out of
So how would
Ohio.
they maintain it then, right? So a lot of these things, I mean, not a lot of them, but you've seen them where they're rusted, they're dented, they're, a little bit askew. They
They're
don't-
abused. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're abused.
And there doesn't seem to be a limit to how many they're putting up, or,
I think from a functional standpoint, we'd be a little bit overstepping in my opinion. I mean, fiber is the way of the future as far as utility. So I think from a functional standpoint, we have to take that into consideration. My thought is not to impede them in that sense as much as just, is there a more aesthetic solution where they could, rotate it even just 15 or 20 feet down one of the side streets or something to get it off those main thoroughfares. Because the one thing I will bring up is though, because I was flipping through it as we were talking, Terry, because I was wondering the same thing, is there anything in here that speaks to this? And not specifically, no. But I extensively, when I joined the board, read this and took notes on it and was freakishly thorough about it. And one of the things that they consider when you're talking about new construction, which they're typically talking about houses, but for the sake of the general idea, there's a lot of considerations to that. It's not just, what are you building, but it's the surrounding area, it's the site, it's whether it looks appropriate within the district, and that is something that we are charged with when we consider adding new elements to a historic district. And if you read, the guidelines in their entirety, that's an ongoing theme of making sure that massing and all these things, that things look appropriate within the context of the historic district. And I'm not unreasonable in saying, well, you just can't put them in the district. That's not reasonable. There's going to have to be fiber in there. They're not going to be able to put boxes, especially the size of our district is huge. It's not like it's one street anymore. So it's an unreasonable ask, in my opinion. But is there anything that they can do to just get them off those main drags? The center, and McKinley's a good point, that's another one.
I think that would be something that we could have Terry take back to them. I think that is something that maybe they should take a look at when they review the ordinances. I think, and as unfortunate as this is going to sound, they've already approved it, and they're only asking us if we think there should be landscaping. Is that correct?
Well, no, I was going to say that's not, the Planning Commission does not approve the aesthetics. They're not charged with that. They're just basically saying, is it functional? If MDOT and these other, engineers or whatever say it is. But I mean, that's not, that's something that they could reject on those grounds anyway.
Yeah, the Planning Commission, let me go back to, let's see, where am I at on this? It's the ordinance that I want. Let's see, let me just open this real quick because it does, rest, and part of it is because of how and I don't want to blame the city attorney's office by any means, but some of this, it is questionable as far as the authority of it. Here it does rest with the Planning Commission, and let me read where it says that. So here it's directing us to distribute it to the HDC for having authority over improvements at the proposed location. Yep, at the proposed utility cabinet location. But now I want to get to where, right here, it says in historically sensitive areas within the city limits, the Planning Commission may require landscaping and/or screening surrounding the utility cabinet. In such case, the Planning Commission must approve any proposed landscaping and/or screening. The owner of the utility cabinet shall maintain it. So I think, and then it does say such sensitive historical areas shall include but not limited to historic districts. So I believe, you could make the recommendation for each individual one or as a blanket to ask them to kind of move them. And then in the time period between now and the Planning Commission meeting, I would have to determine which ones that OmniFiber would be able to move, even as a revision before the staff report goes out for those particular cases for the September 20th, I believe, meeting. Or they could just wait. We don't, we're not trying to rush things at any point for them either, but it's a matter of, I believe, the HDC just making a recommendation on the individual location, saying, okay, this one should be moved, can it be moved, and if it can be, it needs to be moved, and the alternative is that maybe there's a smaller cabinet, that could be in a recommendation. Is there an alternative cabinet for that location? And if not, and if the last thing is the screening, then you would be making a recommendation to the Planning Commission for that screening.
So when you say, I'm sorry, when you say screening, you mean like a screen?
Vegetation,
Vegetation of
yeah,
some
just
sort of
anything that's
fencing or
forming, you
something.
know,
So could we ask them maybe to alter the actual cabinet or have something other than a big, huge box?
Well, that's what Terry's
be-
talking about, but I have something that would kind of supersede a question that would kind of, my understanding of what I'm reading here, and I'm not an attorney, so, you know, bear with me.
yeah.
To me, it sounds like in here, they're saying that the Planning Commission has the authority over screening and landscaping, but the historic has authority over the location. And to me, that says that we don't have to make a recommendation, that if we want to, we could potentially, you know, especially since these are separate cases, hypothetically say, you know, reject the proposed proposal for the location, those specific locations, and say that they could come back with a different cabinet or a different location, or just table it, I mean, however logistically you want to do it. But my point being that I don't think the authority in that case lies with the Planning Commission. To me, I read this, and it lies with us.
So this is my question, and if you indulge me. 888 Center Avenue. My thought is that we should ask them to move that around the corner to North Van Buren Street. With 1104 McKinley Street, to see if that one can be put around the corner as well.
Do we want to put
If they move it around the corner to North Farragut Street, then you are going to be, the home that is there, that's, if you, on that same block, that's all side yard and fenced, so they're not going to be looking out at it. The home that is on the west side of that same corner, the southwest corner, that one is facing McKinley, and there's a garage and stuff there. I would also wonder about the one at 1498 6th Street. Can that be around the corner on North Burney Street? My question about 2025 7th Street, because again, I don't know if there's really much on that, but 616 McKinley Street, which of course is, here you are coming into town, can that be put around the corner to North Madison, which will be across from 2 parking lots, or on the other side of the block, which would be 10th Street, and that is the rescue mission, part of what is no longer a church, and a brick building that I believe at one point was a rectory or a housing for clergy when it was a church way, way back.
Hey, Mary, I'm a bit confused, though. I thought the intent or idea of us having them move them was to keep them off the large drags like Center and McKinley. But if hypothetically that location shifted onto Madison, that's an even larger thoroughfare than 7th Street, isn't it 7th? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I said either that or 10th Street. I'm thinking on 10th, there's a park, and then there's the old church and the rescue mission. And on Madison there, they've got a big sign for the church, and there's a parking lot across. I guess my thought is if there's an option that we can have it near the originally planned location, but yet not residential, if you will.
I mean, I'm trying to, I guess, think of more, because there's going to be more of these cabinets. Some of them may pop up in the historic district. I don't know.
I don't know where we're going to have 50.
I would propose, I guess, to think less about what type of buildings that you're putting them in front of and think more of the surrounding areas and the kind of the site or the neighborhood as a whole, and stick to our large historic avenues. So not nitpicking 6th Street or 7th Street or, all the Bernie or whatever, but sticking to, okay, your big thoroughfares, Center, McKinley, Madison, and kind of preserving those. And then just saying a blanket to them, so when they go through their planning process and they're choosing their locations, just say, we just like it 15 feet or whatever number, or, whatever number we feel, is enough. 15, 20 feet off of those particular large thoroughfares, and just have it be a standard versus a site by site, corner by corner. They have to come in every time, and they, and then they're just going to have to decide. And buildings change, frankly. I mean, and I don't think it's really fair to kind of set this precedent of, we're going to do it site by site instead of a general, idea
Do we know
of let's
why?
just keep it all
If we,
there.
Do we know why they picked these particular sites?
I'm sure it's a functional
But
reason. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
does,
it's all mapped out according to their.
is there one map that shows all of them and where they are in the city?
They might have one, but I don't think,
would
have
like
we
to
seen
see
one of
that.
those?
Not as far as readability. There is a map that they have been working at, and they will be for sure at the planning commission meeting. I've got to have them there for the next one. They were for one of the cases, but there was a miscommunication or something because they weren't at the last meeting, so.
my thought is on that, and I get what we're saying about general ideas, but I guess my question is, if we say this is our recommendation, is that what it is just moving forward, or are they going to continue to need to come to us to look at these? Because if we set the precedent that, like we just want them a general idea, then are we opening ourselves up to them just putting them basically wherever, and then if it's somewhere we don't like, well, that was the recommendation we made.
No, I think they would still have to come before us, but my thought is not doing what we're going to basically be doing now, which is looking at the proposed sites and then saying, you're going to need to switch this one, this one, this one, and this one. You know what I'm saying? Telling them, generally speaking, this is how we'd like it done, and they still have to get approval, which, again, I don't think it's a recommendation to planning. I think, not being an attorney, that says that the authority lies with us, but, Terry can dig into that.
No, right here it does say, it says, in historically sensitive areas within the city limits, the planning commission may require landscaping and screening around the utility cabinet. In such cases, the planning commission must approve any proposed landscaping and screening. And then they're taking a look at these sensitive areas. Now, what's really odd about this is I have used the word recommend because when I come up here, we do send it to the public utility, the city departments, to get their review of it. But then that's all there is in this ordinance that names the Historic District Commission. Right, right. So we did do that. We did distribute copies of the site plan.
No, but what I'm saying is it's saying that we have a, that we have authority.
And actually, some of these, I believe some of them could be placed on private property with easements. So then there's the other question. From a legal standpoint, these are located within the right-of-way. What authority does the HDC have for the specific right-of-way? That's still a question that, could be debated with our city engineer because...
I would say, if you mean from like a functional aspect, I wouldn't think we would have any authority in that particular instance, but I think... as far as like granting easements or anything like that, but the aesthetic component of it is still under our authority.
Right, and that's what we're trying to determine because the Secretary of the Interior isn't clear on any of these.
So what are we being asked then exactly? Right?
Well, just, but the fact too that it has to come before us in and of itself says that we have authority over whether they are placed here like this.
What if we
To
just
me, when
go
it says
across though and say
at the
no?
proposed like at the proposed utility cabinet location.
Yeah, E to me is saying that they have to distribute copies of this to people that have authority over improvements.
Yeah.
So I'm not clear exactly how much authority over improvements we truly have. That's my
Well,
question.
it's saying in nature it does, but then it begs the question of, you know, just, again, just the fact that it's here says we have some kind of authority over it. So how much is that authority? What does it cover?
Right.
Just review, is it?
So if we say,
recommendations,
like
just-
hypothetically, in a hypothetical universe, if we sat here and said, we don't like it, and we rejected this, what happens?
The planning commission still could, review it and approve it.
Really, they're looking for opinion here.
Based on the practice that we have when we route things, because right here, it says the planning department distributes copies of the site plan. So we do give it to the engineer, and we do give it to public utilities and other city departments. The reason we do that is to get their feedback, their comments, their review back to us. And then that is all put together for the staff report that goes to the planning commission, because here it's saying the planning commission is the one that is discussing this sensitive historical areas, that yes, the historic districts can be discussed, but it is the planning commission that has the authority, because the authority under this utility cabinet, and I took the one bullet off, but somewhere here, the references for the site plan is taken from the zoning code.
Where's the site plan? This is the staff.
No, that's what the planning commission gets. But
Yeah.
but that comment in there is saying that these notifications need to be sent out to all bodies with authority,
Right.
which ipso facto says that we have some sort of authority. Because what it sounds like you're saying is the planning commission has all the authority.
They do.
But that's what I'm saying, that doesn't sound like.
It's a recommendation, though. Right.
Out to they're sending that out to people that are responsible for looking at those areas.
Right, but that's not authority. A recommendation is not authority, because at the end of the day, the planning condition, you can read the
Right.
recommendation, but they're not bound in any way. They can do
Right.
whatever they want.
Right.
So to me, that's not authority. Those two words do not go, we can sit there and pretend they're the same, but they're not.
Well, I think we have known for a long time that this committee is looked at for their thought, their input, their
Right.
whatever, but we have no legal authority that is going to be supported by our city attorneys to say, absolutely, we are not approving this, and anyone is bound by that. We can't even take care of Johnson and Center.
I want to see
So-
paper that says that. I mean,
Well, I don't know that we're going to see that. I think with this, it comes down to interpretation, and that's going to be the city attorney and the planning commission.
well, because
what
I
I
would
do
go
th-
back to the document that gives us authority over anything in the first place. Like, what is that verbiage and that language that gives us its authority over certain things as a historic district? I mean,
It must be in the bylaws, right?
I don't
So
know.
what I'm thinking,
It's got to be somewhere, the city
Well,
ordinance, something.
I mean,
Something has to give us authority.
I think that we have review authority, but when it comes to legal authority, yeah, we can send Neil and his troops to take stuff to court, and we have in the past several times, and the most recent still being Center and Johnson. We cannot force him to clean up his yard. We can't force him to fix some seriously deteriorating things on that structure. So I think
A
absent
lot of that
some,
falls under the maintenance umbrella, which we don't technically have authority over.
I'm thinking I'm missing something, but I got a question. The one located at, which one is this here?
well, my thought is, in the interim,
The
I
one
think,
on 7th. Down at the bottom, it says The proposed cabinet by Omnifiber complies with all but one regulation listed. What is the regulation that it doesn't comply with, or am I reading that incorrectly?
Oh, that's probably because that chart got screwed up. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
and that's where I had,
caught this right
correct.
here. And this is from the original,
I think-
and that just didn't get corrected, that's all.
So I think that probably the best we can do is send Terry to them saying that overall, we are not pleased, nor would we support the placement of these large cabinets on major, highly traveled roads within the historic district, meaning Center, Midland Street, McKinley,
Yeah, yeah. The very
Park.
historically relevant thoroughfare. I mean, frankly, the city was built, at the turn of the century as those are the main arteries, and that's where most of the historic districts lie. And so, completely aside from how many cars drive down the street, those are the ones that are the most historically significant. So, yes, I agree.
I think that Terry should also take back to Neil. I think that absent changes in the ordinances, I think that maybe what would be good is to have something from Neil saying, this, in my interpretation, in a legal interpretation, offering a legal opinion, this is the authority that I believe these particular ordinances grant to the Historic District Commission. I think that could make things a little easier moving forward, and I think that it could maybe lend itself when it's time to review the ordinance and maybe update that.
Agreed. And I think maybe in the interim, while that is going on, we just table it.
I think we need to at least tell Terry that we are not supportive in any way of these being on these majorly traveled roads in this district.
And we could hypothetically, if we don't have a problem with 6th Street, 7th Street, was there another one? I don't know, the not main thoroughfare. We could hypothetically approve those. But without authority over these things, I don't really know what the point of us approving or denying anything is anyway.
Well,
When is their next discussion? I guess my question is, they've asked us for an opinion. When do they need our opinions by for them to make a informed decision on this?
well, on these particular cabinets, being in the historically sensitive area, the expectation was to hold these ones back, get the review of the historic district, and then bring them to the planning commission for the September meeting.
Well, I think,
Can we make a recommendation without formally, approving or denying what's in front of us?
yeah, I don't think we can approve or deny it. That's not what they're asking. They're asking for our opinion on these,
Just
and I
simply
think,
screening, yeah.
and it really comes down to, when I was in school, it really does not come down to us approving or disapproving. It really comes down to, do we think, because of the aesthetic issue, that there needs to be screening?
Right.
I don't believe that screening is really going to do anything for all of the conversation we've had tonight, but I do think that what we need to send Terry with is our strong feeling against placement in the historic district on these majorly traveled roads. Let him take that back to them. And I think some of this is finding our way and letting them see, oh, they really do care about that. Let him take that back, and he can tell them, look, not only does it not look good in those neighborhoods, but we've all seen some of those smaller, I don't know if they're like phone or whatever, but people go and they hit them with their car, they hit them with God knows what. They're broken, they're hanging apart or whatever.
So maybe what we are saying is that we want to see some kind of alternative to what is being
Right.
proposed.
I was going to say,
Well-
I think we can make our recommendation, and then the planning commission, can hear, frankly, whether, in the meantime, Terry can get with.
Well, let me interject here. There's some things that are written right here in the ordinance, it states that a ground-mounted utility cabinet shall have a maximum height of 66 inches. So the 48-inch cabinet, we would be challenged in court because we're allowing a maximum height of 66 inches.
Already done my part, and I've already cut it down by
Right.
16.
Right. So we're telling them they have the ability to go up to 66 inches, and it shall not exceed 80 feet in volume. That's not including the meter box. And then it has some specifications.
Terry, I think I would ask for some clarification on that. When they're saying, because if I were their attorney, this is what I'd be asking. Are you saying a maximum of 66 for the box, or are you saying a maximum of 66 inches for the entire thing? Meaning that foundation and the box, because that foundation is not small.
Well, here it
It's not
says
2,
the
3 inches.
ground-mounted utility cabinet and meter box shall be mounted on a concrete pad that is not to exceed 100 square feet.
So it could be thin and big, or it can be really thick and not so big.
Well, I think, didn't you say 66 was the height?
That's the maximum height that's allowed.
Not like you can put that box, just sit it on that pad. There has to be some permanent attachment there. So does that attachment now constitute
I would assume it would
one
be everything
piece?
above the ground, everything above grade.
Right, it would
But-
be at grade.
But really, at the end of the day, the planning commission and these other, whoever wrote the ordinance, whatever, aesthetics are not what they're charged with. So I'd like to get some clarification and basically something written that says that we have no authority here because we're the only board.
Well, I didn't say
that
you
can
didn't
speak
have no authority. We were requesting a recommendation be made, but the,
I get that, but that's not authority. you know?
But we can strongly recommend.
Can I ask this, though? Since this was brought to our committee, that's loud, since this was brought to our committee and they are looking for an opinion, and we have obviously all come to an agreement that we have some charge over aesthetics, is that not one of the key points that we want to make in our recommendation, is that as a committee that looks at this, these are our recommendations based off of our charge with aesthetics in our community in the historic district?
Yeah, as the people who are responsible for guarding the historic integrity of this city, and frankly, not to get on a soapbox, but the number one thing you hear about people coming through our city and our tourism and the things that people love about this city, the number one thing you will see is people say that they love driving down Center Avenue and seeing the historic houses on this particular avenue. And to build, I'm sure it probably would only be a handful of cabinets, but again, it's a precedent that this is a very significant element to our city, and it is our job to protect the historical elements. And frankly, that is our sole authority. And if we can't do that, then what are we even here for? So again, why are we here then? If we have no authority, and I get it, recommendations, but at the end of the day, a recommendation is nothing but somebody's opinion. And I just want to know, I'm sorry, I want more, I want an attorney or somebody to say formally that we have absolutely no authority. Or
the opposite.
frankly, it might be a moot point and they might say it's no problem to move it around the corner and who cares? And then we don't have to argue about this anymore.
Well, I think, just so that we can move forward and we can adjourn, I think, if I'm hearing correctly, that we are telling Terry that we would like Neil to kind of look at the ordinance and say exactly what degree of authority do we have and how are they defining that? And I think then coming back to this particular case, I think we need to share with them exactly what you said, which is the historical integrity of those majorly traveled roads, and that at this time, we cannot support their placement on Center, on McKinley, that kind of thing, and then let them go from there, that we would have no problem if they want to move it around the corner, but we're finding it in those particular places particularly more offensive than not.
I have a related.
Yes?
But
Is everyone
question.
is everyone
Yes, I
agreeing
agree.
to that?
Yes. as someone who sits on the planning commission, as this states in here, is the aesthetics of it, and they can read our recommendations, but is that something that can weigh, formally speaking, legally speaking, weigh into their decision?
I'm going to just defer and we'll wait for that opinion. I'm not going to really.
Because, I mean, that says
Take any
screening and
more questions?
landscaping, and if that's what we were suggesting, it wouldn't be a question, but since we're suggesting moving it basically solely for aesthetic purposes,
I think-
that's something that they can ask for.
I think that we need to have something on the record for Terry, and I think perhaps we need a motion that says, we, at this time, and with these particular set of facts, so we're not saying this forever, we're saying at this time and with the facts and the ordinance as presented, that we are not seeing a benefit to landscaping and screening. However, we do take issue with the placement on these major historic traveled roads. I think,
So what are you suggesting we do with what's on the table?
well, what's on the table is, we're not saying, so if we send him with that, we're not saying it needs landscaping.
No, I get that, but
or
I'm
any
saying,
of
what's
that.
our motion? Like, what are we?
Our motion would be that, well, we would move that the recommendation that Terry carries back to the Planning Commission is that at this time and with these particular set of facts and this particular ordinance as it is currently written,
Right.
that we are not advocating nor recommending screening or landscaping, but we are expressing in our recommendation that we do not support the placement of these things on Center and McKinley, which are highly traveled and significant historic areas. I think that then is not saying for all time this is what we're going to say, but it's very clear that it's at this time with this set of facts and the way this ordinance is currently written. That way we then can go to Neil and say, I would like you to review the ordinance, review what authority is there, what degree of authority, who has to take that then, and what do they have to do with it? Is it just a thanks for your thought and we're going to do what we want? Or do we have something? That is going to have to be a legal opinion rendered by someone, probably Neil.
But if we do it that way, then we've kind of already acted on this case as is. I mean, as far as, you know, you go to the attorney and you ask for some clarification, but, you know, it's kind of like, for what purpose? You know
Well,
what I mean? I get going forward, but, you know,
purpose-
it's time, it's money.
Well, the purpose being, and we've already had this discussion, landscaping and screening, A, is not going to be maintained. We already, these people are out of Ohio, they don't care, they live near Cincinnati. We already know that it's going to be more work for whoever has to
So
maintain
I'm
it.
saying, what's the purpose of having the attorney review it? If we already say this is what we've recommended, it's over
Well,
for us
maybe
now.
we
You
want
see
to
what I'm saying?
table it then until after we hear from the attorney.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure that we should do anything until we hear from the attorney.
I think if we're waiting for that, that's going to be a while. I think he's
I'm
got
okay
a
with
lot
that.
of things. And I think with these, right now,
Well, there's two things to consider.
we're already not,
As the attorney is being reviewing this, like Mary's suggestion, is one, a certificate of appropriateness is not under discussion. Two, the appeal process for any decision of the HDC goes to the State Historic Preservation Office. So I don't even know how all of that would work with this. This is a city code of ordinance that the language as it is written is within that ordinance. Preferably, it was all vetted when it was adopted, when it was prepared by an attorney to make sure that the terms and the conditions represented within that were valid. There's questions about that, and I think we'll have to do some more research. There's a lot of questions about this ordinance at this point with the HDC, And we're just going to have to wait for that opinion, and it'll be shared with Omni-Fiber also.
I think we also have to look back and remember
wrap up.
that 11 years ago and 20 years ago, fiber optics were not in our language 20 years ago. You know what I mean? So this really is kind of a thing in progress because we didn't depend on the computer and cell phones and fiber optics when we were architectural review.
Well, and the thing that I didn't
The
really
law
put
doesn't keep up with those changes always.
Yep. And then, as Ashley knows from the Planning Commission, I had stated that the other part of this, which isn't even under the preview of the Planning Commission or the Planning Department, is what's called the Metro Act. And that's all these physical attachments that go within the city utility poles. That is all kind of within this, but it's a whole separate state act that has to do with how utility companies and the city work together to share those services on public utility poles, and it's called the Metro Act. I've never wanted to read about it, but it is parallel with this. So when Omni-Fiber approached the city, they were on two tracks. They were on a track for the Metro Act and the connection, whatever all that is about, to the utility poles, and then they had the utility cabinets, and those are submitted as a package. And like I said, the Metro Act, the Planning Department has no authority whatsoever over it. Again, it's in the right-of-way. So having said that, there's just a lot of questions that...
Yeah, so I guess I would say, is it possible
Well,
to have one of the two, go ahead, Mary, to have, I mean, have the conversation, maybe this is all for naught, and it's an easy enough switch that they'd be willing to make. Or, the city attorney or whomever else can shed light on, the question of authority. And I have some sort of confidence that at least one of those things could be answered in a short enough time frame that, it's not necessarily holding them or anyone else up. And,
I will do my best to make it a timely effort to get some answers going.
So,
Is there a time restraint?
That would have to be communicated back with Omni-Fiber. When they submitted all the packages, they were almost with the expectation as we're ready to go. What they didn't realize is some of these address assignments were incorrect. So we had to stop the bus on all of them to say we have to have all the addresses vetted. You can't, use some of the addresses that you had. So that was kind of a hiccup from the beginning that I don't ever recall from the earlier cabinets having that problem. But yeah, they had put it's near. Well, these cabinets have to have an assignment, and that assignment, we had to go through the assessing department to get that. So we informed Omni-Fiber that, okay, your cabinets had to get properly vetted through the assessing office. That's where they're at right now. Then, as I looked through the list, I identified these in the historic district. So, okay, those ones we're going to have to handle separately. Which ones can I put on the Planning Commission agenda that are ready? So I had, 6 to 8 of them on the August Planning Commission meeting. We got through those approvals. Then my idea was to take these 5 and whatever other ones we can catch up. I had sent them an email asking them, as I was making decisions about what ones to put on the agenda for the Planning Commission. I asked for some feedback. I didn't get a reply, so that's when I started to carve up the submittal that they had. But in their ideal world, I would have taken, all the applications submitted so far and then just processed them. So they do understand that, the Historic District Commission was going to be provided an opportunity to review these, and to comment on them.
Yeah, they have a bunch that they're doing, which, you know, based on our conversations at planning and HDC here, and I don't work for the company, so, you know, I reserve the right to be wrong, but it seems like there's plenty of work for them, that my thought on maybe how we should treat it tonight is, especially since these are separate cases, you know, recommend to whomever, the addresses that we have no contest with. That would allow them to finish going through the process on planning. Are 2 or, you know, whatever number, I think it's just 2, but anyway, that we have issue with. Recommend that we speak to Omni Fiber, you know, and get some clarification from the city attorney, you know, whatever, on, you know, a way to resolve this problem. And then we can, you know, table our recommendation on formally, I guess, for those other 2 cases, and then recommend, so that they can move forward on the ones that we don't have a problem with. You see what I'm saying? And they have a bunch of other addresses too, by the way. We're only looking at the ones that are in the historic.
I guess my issue is if we are stuck on the fact that we are waiting for a recommendation from the lawyer, then how do we say, well, we're okay on these, but we're not okay on the other? If we are, that we have to have something from the city attorney to say what our authority is, then I think that if that is of importance,
I think
can't
one more thing.
I think it's 2-pronged. The other prong is whether they would change it.
As I've had another thought, I think that what we need to do, and I'm happy to make a motion, I think that we need to, I think that the ones in the motion we need to, certainly we can say, you know, okay to a couple of them, but that as with regard to Center Avenue and the 2 on McKinley Street, that we are not approving those. We're not approving them. We're not providing a positive recommendation for that placement. Our feeling is that they should be placed around the corner. I think if we do that and Terry takes that back, now the attorney is going to have to look at that to say, okay, so do they have the authority now? Do they have the authority to say no? And if he says they don't have it, then they move forward. But I think that if we say, you know, we're going to wait for that, we're going to wait a long time. I think in putting out the recommendation that we're not recommending landscaping on any of it, because of the, you know, long-term issues with that, but that as far as Center Avenue and the 2 on McKinley Street, we are not recommending those, and our recommendation is that they be placed around the corner, not on the well-traveled historic district street. I think once he takes that back, now they have something specific to look at, and then it says to the planning commission, well, they're not approving it, so now what do we do? They're going to have Neil take a look at that.
It's basically like we're approving the ones that we're okay with and denying the, I mean, in essence, if we were treating them like any other case, that then in essence, we're denying it, and then it's up to the city attorney to figure out whether we can do that or not.
Well, why
And it would
wouldn't we
also
lump
give the
them all
Omni-
together, though? Why would we only take a couple of them and say this?
Because we don't have hypothetically a problem with all of them. But oh shit, I lost my thought. Excuse me, I didn't say that on the record. Then Omnisource, I keep trying to call them that, Omnifiber, would then have the option where they could subvert the problem entirely if it was something that they could easily switch and just say, at our next meeting, you know, they could get a new recommendation from us.
I think they could, but I think also we're not privy to the contract that they have with the city, so I don't know if there has to be a certain turnaround time, if there are deadlines, and I think if there are, that will facilitate a more expeditious look by the city attorney.
Yes. I'm just saying that the avenue is still open for them to come back and get our approval if it's something that they can easily fix. That was all I was saying. But otherwise, yes, I completely agree.
So I move that the recommendation from this committee be taken by Terry back to the Planning Commission. The recommendation being that we are not recommending at this time any screening or landscaping due to the long-term maintenance issues that would be associated with that, and that we are not at this time approving or recommending placement of those cabinets on Center Avenue or the two on McKinley Street due to the fact that they are highly traveled, well-traveled streets in a major area of the historic district.
Support.
Can I ask a question before we go forward? So with regards to the other three, or the other two, are we going to be setting precedent then if we say, if we just kind of overlook those and say that those are fine? So right now what you're saying is we don't have an issue with the height, the way that it looks, the,
No, we're not saying that. They asked us about screening and landscaping, and we are specifically addressing only those two things on those two things, meaning we're not recommending, landscaping or screening on those two.
But we are ipso facto saying that we're okay with the locations.
with the locations, but what about any other aspect of it? Do we have any say over any other aspect of it, like what they look like, how big they are? And
I think that is probably contractual, and we're not privy to those details,
Well, and also, we don't know what the options are there anyway.
how do we, shouldn't we be figuring that out, though? I mean,
Terry already read the ordinance and
already
already
been
said
in
that
the
it was
ordinance.
within the size, correct? It
Size
was
is already in the
within the
ordinance.
size that was specified in the ordinance.
It's already specified in the ordinance, and I'm not sure who signs those contracts, but if we try to do something other than that, the city is now going to be in breach of that contract, and now there's litigation. We have nothing to do with somebody who has submitted their stuff, and the city is saying, okay, you're within the scope of the ordinance. We certainly
I don't know,
can't overrule that.
I think it goes back to the question of authority, though, because hypothetically, those ordinances are written as, for functional, they're not ever written for aesthetics. So as far as what we're charged with as an HDC, we don't use those ordinances as a basis to make decisions. So as far as our decisions are concerned, we don't have to adhere to their 66. Just like in building code, it's not our job to know what the building code is. We decide our own separate thing, whether it is suitable for us, and then it moves on to building code.
so is there an actual contract already with this company?
I don't know those details.
Okay, so we're making an assumption that they would be in breach of a contract that we don't even know that if they have
Yeah, we're
signed.
not privy to any of those details. Did they sign one? What's the agreement? What are they? We don't know. We don't know. But if we say, no, they can't do this because we think it's too big,
I think we would still have the purview to recommend that from an aesthetic point, well, or that they're just too large from an aesthetic standpoint, if we wanted to make that argument. Personally, I think it's getting nitpicky. I think if there was another option that we were aware of, I would clearly rather have that if it was like a smaller cabinet. But without knowing for any type of certainty that that's even an option, it begs
shouldn't
the
we find
question,
that
do
out,
we
though?
even?
I think
Before we take action, shouldn't we know what our options are?
right now we don't really have any other options.
But why would we make a motion, though, if we don't know what our options are? is
We're
what I'm
making a
saying.
motion about the screening. They asked us to look at the screening, and that is what we've done. By telling them that we're not approving placement on Center and McKinley, now it then forces them as a committee, when Terry says that, now it forces them to say, can we just go ahead and move forward with it? Or what kind of authority do they have? It forces them to have a legal opinion of, does what they have put forth to us have, do they have standing to do that or not? And that is the attorney is going to have to figure that out for them, because they can't just ask for a recommendation and then when we say we're not approving and don't approve of the placement of those things, now, Terry, is that not correct? Now, what do we have to do with this? And I think they're going to have to ask Neil about it, do you not? I think that, because otherwise, if we just say, well, we want you to tell us, you know what, we're not going to get into that for all.
I think basically what you're getting at is either because I get what Mary's saying, I get what you're saying. I think we are kind of making an aesthetic argument. So hypothetically, that aesthetic argument could apply to all cases equally. But what I assume you mean is that we're basically saying from an aesthetic standpoint, which is a question we are posing, what she's saying is we're basically approving that those other locations, we don't have a problem with it. And so by saying that, are we setting a precedent now that these large cabinets are acceptable? I think your only alternative would either be to table it and come back to it to see if there's any other options, or deny it across the board, deny all of them, and say that our recommendation is to find out if they have smaller cabinets, and regardless of size, on these two locations, we'd like them moved. I mean, those are your only choices, in my opinion.
I stress we must get the opinion of the attorney, because there's some statements that I could make that I don't want to make. It's best that it comes from the city attorney.
And I think that for us to say they have to be smaller, that is, we're now requesting something that's in total violation of the ordinance.
But I don't agree with that, because we're making an aesthetic argument on
We
Center
are.
and McKinley.
We are, and what happens when two city things come in conflict, it now begs a legal issue.
Well,
So I
right,
think-
which is why I think the clarification is, so I guess maybe, and I know that this isn't preferred by everyone, we like to move things along, but maybe we just table it.
There is a motion on the
We have to-
table right
yeah.
now.
We have to, yeah,
That
we
is
have
true.
to.
Yep.
And my question, well, I guess it probably doesn't matter. Okay, so all those in favor? Okay, so,
I have a question before we vote. What happens if we're split? Since we have an even number.
Right.
Well, hypothetically, if we split it, could you put another motion on the table?
and then, but the question then is, if that motion then fails because it is split, Terry has to take that back, and now there really is no push for Neil to make any determination on anything. They couldn't come to an agreement, okay, they move on. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I see exactly what you're saying, Mary.
All right.
I'm just trying to figure out where my head is at with it. Thank you.
Well, vote, I will say, and I know it sounds hard to say or to hear, but it does say the planning department shall distribute copies of the site plan to the city engineer, other departments, and the Historic District Commission have an authority over improvements at the proposed utility location. That's all it says. That is all it says. We distribute it. Then, as I repeated myself in number 6, it says the historic sensitive areas the planning commission may require. And then it refers to these, right, such sensitive historic areas shall include the historic district, which is established by Chapter 64 of the City Code. So, again, I firmly believe that we have the planning commission that ultimately decides, what the screening will be.
I was going to say,
And the question is...
I hear what you're saying, which is in essence, we have no authority, and it's just them taking our opinion. And yes, the sentiment of the ordinance is that at the end of the day, the planning commission makes but if we're going to get in an argument about,
Well, I'm not arguing, I'm just referring to the
wording, it really
spend the night
only
by
speaks
having the
to
city attorney review it.
screening and landscaping.
I think that in what I have put forth, I think that is very clear then to them, we're not in favor of stuff on those streets, and it will require Neil to weigh in on that, is all I'm saying, and then we'll need to go with that. Now, if we want to amend the city ordinance at some point, I think we can absolutely work with Terry and his department on doing that, that's not going to happen right now.
Right, right.
We have to go with what we have.
Exactly.
So, okay, so.
I'm ready.
All right, I'm gonna do a roll call, so it's very clear in the minutes. Mary Ann,
No.
Ashley,
Yes.
Grace,
Yes.
Mary, yes. Motion passes. Please take that recommendation to them, and then when you speak with Neil, express to him what the concerns were here, because we would like to know moving forward,
Right.
so we're not wasting anyone's time, and so the planning commission as well knows that what we give them, is it a recommendation or is it a directive? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there support? All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at 7:57.
I want a time check, and I want to know the record on the longest, no, I'm kidding. I'm sure way back in the day, they were way longer.
When Hereford,
But in the last 5 years.
I can tell you from the cobwebs of my mind, and Terry maybe will remember this too, that when Hereford and Hops was getting all